Hi everyone, this is Mr. Kistler coming to you from the home office, and we are meeting again, but under different circumstances than when we left. I want to talk to you today about Congress and the ways that the two different houses work, how they are there to legislate, right? When they do so, and so you have an article to read. I'm also going to put a couple other links for you to look at, and I'll reference those in this video. The first thing is that we just want to remember that the Constitution vests legislative power in the Congress. It's the first branch in the Constitution. And James Madison said something like, in a republic, the legislative must predominate, right? You may remember that the idea is that we live in a government of laws. In theory, in practice, any system is going to be imperfect. But in theory, we live in a government of laws, and so you have to have laws from Congress to be able to act. It's explained there, the limited powers of Congress in the 18 clauses of Article 1, Section 8. And so in theory, that gives us the grounding for Congress's powers. In practice, Congress has found ways to extend its powers beyond what the framers might have imagined. Also, because of amendments like the 14th Amendment, for example, giving Congress additional powers. And that's either a good thing or a bad thing or a mixed bag, depending on what you think. But Congress does have more national power than perhaps originally intended. And one of the keys for that has been the Interstate Commerce Clause in the Constitution. It's the clause in Article 1, Section 8, giving Congress the power to regulate commerce between the states. And not surprisingly, Congress has found lots of ways to do that. To say this, relates to our interstate commerce power. I believe that we have already talked about, things like the Violence Against Women Act or the Gun Free Schools Act, where Congress legislated about guns and about domestic violence, and said we can do this because there's some kind of relationship to interstate commerce. And the Supreme Court in both cases said, no, you're going too far. That's not really interstate commerce. But for a long time, Congress had been able to build almost anything it wanted to on that interstate commerce clause, even when there was a man feeding his animals from his own grain field, and they said, well, that still affects interstate commerce. And again, people's opinions about this will sometimes depend on their politics, and their how much they want the government to solve or try to solve a certain problem. But it's Congress can do a lot, or has done a lot anyway. And what we want to see is that there is a process. Congress doesn't just pass laws. There's a process for it, and it's going to be explained in a link to a video, the famous Schoolhouse Rock video. I'm pretty sure that if I don't play that, the political science police come and take me away, even in these times of the coronavirus, and they'll come outside their social distancing zones, come and take me away. And so if I don't link to the Schoolhouse Rock video, there could be very drastic consequences. So I will do that, plus another little takeoff on that from Vox.com. So that does explain the regular order process, right, where the two houses, or one of the two houses, has a bill introduced by a constituent or by a member, by a senator or representative. It goes to committee, etc. Now, as the article by Paul Kane, Derek Willis talks about in the one from the Washington Post, it doesn't always work that way anymore. It's become a lot harder to get things passed in Congress. That we don't really do budgeting anymore. just kind of continue things from the last time. Your book talks about that too. And is that good or bad? It really kind of depends again on your perspective. The idea that Congress has a hard time getting things done can seem very difficult. On the other hand, we're a pretty divided nation on a lot of things, so maybe that reflects our divisions. Our libertarian friends will sometimes remind us that be thankful that Congress can't get as much done because that means they don't do a lot of things that would have been bad. So it's not only hard to get good things done, it's hard to get bad things done. Other people just simply get frustrated because there are things that people would like to get done that may even have majority support in the country, but doesn't get done in Congress. So it's not necessarily just a out and out terrible thing that Congress has a tough time passing things, but there does seem to be some frustration in the houses of Congress themselves about that. And we're in kind of an interesting period of polarization and everything too. Now, Congress also has to do other things too. It confirms. The Senate votes on judges to whether to confirm them or not. The president nominates judges for the U.S. district courts, for the appellate courts, which is the next level up above the district courts, and then for the Supreme Court, as well as some other federal judges too, I believe. And the Senate must confirm by a majority vote, and that ends up being a lot of what the Senate does these days, and so that's important, very important, because judges do make the determination on whether laws and other actions by government, are constitutional, even whether state laws are constitutional or not, can be made. That decision can be made in the Supreme Court. So judgeships are important. And as we'll see in a couple of weeks when we get to the judiciary, there's a major divide between the two parties, between Americans, on how judges should read the Constitution and should interpret it. So that's also something that's important to think about. We will do that in a couple of weeks. It's the plan. So confirmation hearings are important. Also, congressional oversight. Okay, one of the ways. Hi, Sabrina.
Mom needs some help with the crane that fell apart.
Okay, can I come down in a few minutes? All right, tell her I'll be down in a few minutes. Let me see part of the life in the home office too. I'm glad you got to see the 4-year-old. Now, the congressional oversight means that Congress often will take it upon itself to investigate the president or corporations or other dealings. Congress has an infrastructure to be able to do that. Different Congress people they all have staffs. Committees have staffs of researchers and all sorts of people that can help them to conduct investigations. It very easily turns into, or I shouldn't say turns into, has a theatrical aspect of it where Congress people like to be seen on television asking tough questions, and can very easily turn into grandstanding. Again, it's a little easier to call it grandstanding if you disagree with the congressperson or senator who's doing it. It's much easier for me to think, oh, that person I disagree with is grandstanding, and that person I do agree with is just asking tough questions. But there is an undeniable kind of theatrical aspect to it, especially you see this in the Supreme Court hearings too. That's a bit of oversight. Okay, Mr. President, we're not just going to confirm the person that you nominate, we're going to examine them. And that, has got a good aspect. It's good to be able to examine before you vote. It also then turns into ways that Congress people can show themselves to be tough or public spirited or whatever. And in that article by Kane and Willis, there's a short excerpt, for a minute or so excerpt of Ben Sass's speech during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, where he talks about why the Senate has gone astray and why Congress has gone astray. And you can watch that too. That's all part of the way that they can communicate themselves to the public. I like Ben Sass. There's an element of it where it's like, well, does this really have to do with the hearing too? Yes, Sabrina.
Mom figured a way.
Oh, good. Very good. So that's oversight is a way in which Congress investigates. A big aspect of this was that we saw recently was the impeachment, where it started out as a House investigation of the Trump presidency, and then was ultimately turned into impeachment. And that's part of Congress's powers too. Lastly, the redistricting issue. Congressional redistricting is really important because every 10 years there's a census. The House of Representatives has to be representative, and states get their number of representatives in the House of Representatives by the census. So most likely, I think I've talked about this before, Illinois will lose a representative after the 2020 census because we've lost population. Other states have gained, more, and so basically the total population is divided by 435, and that's the size of a district, and then each state gets a certain number of districts. Every state has to get at least one, okay, and then each state is divided into the number of districts that it has representatives. So Illinois will most likely have 19. I think it has 20 now, and that process is controlled by state legislatures. Okay, so the state legislature draws the districts. They can do that in a couple of ways. They can have their own people do it. And so you can see in Illinois, it's very favorable to Democrats. And the Democrats had the strength to push it through. That's happened in a lot of states under Republican legislatures too. The party in power, if it can, will draw a map very favorable to itself. Okay, and this is explained in your book too. The classic ways are packing and cracking. You pack, if you can, your opponents into a small number of districts, and you say, okay, well, if you're a Republican, oh well, the Democrats will win this district, but it concentrates Democratic voters so well that they will then increase the number of Democrats elsewhere. Or if you might say, let's crack, right? Let's take this power base here, this concentration of, say, Republican voters, if you're a Democrat, and we'll crack it, and we'll dilute the Republicans into a number of Democratic districts. This is, what can happen in either case. And so if you look at the Illinois map, a lot of districts use the heavy Democratic base of Chicago and then add some Republicans in so that you can have more Democratic districts. What that does is it cracks the Republican strongholds in places like the western suburbs of Chicago, or, Kankakee County is in this too. A lot of Kankakee County is Republican, but it's included in a district with the South Side of Chicago, which is heavily Democratic. And you could look at that on the one hand as diluting Kankakee County's Republicans. On the other hand, I would think if I were an African American Democrat, not that all African Americans are Democrats, but overwhelmingly they are. If I were a black Democrat in Kankakee County, it's like, all right, cool. I'm part of a district that votes like me instead of being, so there's different sides of the coin. And this is a political act, the act of redistricting. And when it gets really outrageous, it's called gerrymandering. Okay, the packing and the cracking and the figuring out how to draw it in a district in a way that maximizes your party's advantage at the expense of the other party. Some states have gone to what's called an independent model, where you have a commission of judges or some kind of independent commission draw the districts. Ohio has gone to this. California has gone to this. And so that's an important thing to understand, too, that not all states do it the same way. All right? So those are some of the key concepts here for the week and understanding about Congress. I'll see you in the discussion, and I will also be grading your quizzes from before break, hopefully on Monday, and then also your stuff from this week. Okay, I've also posted the Color of Law Discussion 1 and the Essay 1 for that. And thanks for your patience during all this. I hope that things flipping over to online has not been too disruptive, given all the other disruptions. But please tell me how I can do better. All right? And I appreciate your concern. Thanks for bearing with the little one coming in. I hope that provided a little moment of levity and wasn't too distracting. All right. Talk to you later.